everyone! Today I'm gonna do my June wrap-up. First of all, if you can hear any noise in the background, that's because I'm filming while there is a football game going on and there's public viewing right outside my window. So just, that you know. And yeah, I had an amazing reading month in June. I read 8 things and I loved so many of them. I have some amazing ratings and I'm just so excited to talk about these books, so I'm just gonna get right into it. So first off, we have The Brightsiders by Jen Wilde. This is a new release that came out in May. This was amazing. I love this so much. I already loved Jen Wilde's Queens of Geek, but this was even better. I really don't even know where to begin with telling you all of the things that I loved about it. First of all, it was the perfect read to start Pride Month, perfect. This has such great diversity in it. The main character, Emmy, is bisexual. We have a love interest who is genderqueer. There's so many queer side characters. It's just so unapologetically queer. I have all of these specific marginalizations in my Goodreads review because there's also mental health and there's just so much going on, so I can't remember it all, but it's in my Goodreads review, so you can check that out if you want to know all of the diversity in it. But yeah, so unapologetically queer. Then I really loved the whole band and fame aspect, and I like that they were also separate from each other in a way. We had the fame aspect and how that can be really hard. But then also I, as a person who was in a band for a really long time, could still relate to it. I really liked that. It was still just about songwriting, about just performing, being in a band, not necessarily how it feels to be in a famous band, but just how it feels to be in a band and how it feels to be famous, if you know what I mean. That's very specific because I personally, want to be able to relate to the band kind of stuff, but still something that I personally positively noticed, especially the songwriting. I really loved the aspects of how it was shown in here, how cathartic songwriting can be and how much it can really help. And I also really loved the aspect of drinking as a teen. I think that is a topic that does not get mentioned enough in YA at all. It's adults want to, and I guess it's probably because some parents I don't want to read about alcohol in my YA book. But so far, all of the books that I have read that were kind of talking about any kind of substance abuse, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, it was always done in a way that at the end of the story you were that's bad. You shouldn't, you shouldn't use drugs. You shouldn't, overuse alcohol. So I think it's really sad that it's not a topic that gets talked about more, because I think it's a topic that a lot of people can relate to. Maybe it's also because in the US it's illegal, so that's also why people don't want to include it in their YA. But for someone like me who lives in a country where you could already start drinking some alcoholic drinks with 16 and then every alcoholic drink with 18, it is just really important for me to have these kinds of things in YA as well, because alcohol is definitely something that I think, it can be a lot of fun and it tastes good depending on what you like. But there's also such a small line to doing too much of it, and I think it has to be portrayed in YA much more. And I love that portrayal in here. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I thought it was great that this kind of portrayed how fast this can become a problem, even if it doesn't feel like it. Love that so much. I loved so many things about this book. I loved all of the characters. This is wonderful and I'd highly recommend it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Then I just want to quickly mention Die Heirat by Nikolai Gogol. This is a play that I read for my acting class. Gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Wasn't one of my favorites, but one that I really enjoyed. I thought it was just an interesting way of doing one of these comedies. And I think especially for the time this was written in, I think the ending was a little bit unconventional. So I very much enjoyed this. And this is definitely one of those plays where I totally want to see a production of this and totally want to see this on stage, so that's always a very good sign. Just nothing that I'd love. It's not Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf for sure, but it was good. I enjoyed myself while reading it. Then I finally read Furyborn by Claire Regand. It's been 84 years. Oh my god. I'm still having mixed feelings on this. I enjoyed a lot of this, but I thought overall, and it's also why I'm not doing a video review on it, because I find this so messy and confusing, and that's also my biggest issue with it. I think it is just so all over the place. And I liked the general world building. I liked all of the characters, although some more than others, obviously. But overall, there were so many things about it that I truly, truly enjoyed. I just thought it was so messy, and I really had such a hard time following it sometimes. It was really the characters that kept me going, especially Riel's storyline more than Eliana's storyline. I definitely have to say that I kind of could have lived without Eliana's storyline. I also found Riel's storyline, especially in the last 2/3, a lot easier to follow. Elle's storyline seems easier, but I think it's just, you know, this one is the most all over the place in my personal opinion, whereas Riel's storyline after a little while follows a very clear path, and like I feel like her motives and everything that's going on around her is much more clearer than it is in Elle's storyline. So not only did I like her character less, I also had much more problems following her storyline, so naturally I didn't really enjoy these chapters as much as Riel's. I definitely love both romances that were portrayed in here. I think Claire Legrand is amazing at writing romantic storylines. That was not a goal for us. That would have sounded different, but what was it? Was it a goal for the other team, or was it just one of those situations where it was like, it could have been a goal? See, that's the struggle. Like, I'm slightly interested, but I'm not interested enough to watch it. Anyway, back to Furyborn. Both romantic storylines were intense but subtle, and that's just amazing skill to me. I really, really loved that. So all of these little things, they were able to like kind of pull me through this, but oh, it was also a lot. I do definitely have to say that when I finished this, my first thought was, this will be so much fun to reread because I will understand much more, and because I do love the characters and I do find the world interesting. So, you know, I feel like it definitely achieved something positive overall. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I am probably gonna reread it shortly before the sequel comes out. I'm thinking by the time that comes out, I might be a different person, who knows. But right now, I'm definitely thinking I'm intrigued, and yeah, it was an interesting, confusing, intriguing reading experience. Then I read The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. I have already done a full video review of this, so I'm gonna leave a link to that in the description in the info card. This was fantastic. This was a YA science fiction that I had completely different expectations for, and it blew all of these expectations out of the water and surprised me with something completely different, and I loved it. I thought this was just so intense, and I love the balance between having a science fiction story and having all of these things that I cannot relate to, and then having all of these other things that are just so human. The main character really struggles with mental health and just in general loneliness because she's all on her own on a spaceship, nightmares, and there's just so much stuff going on like as a human experience, but then at the same time it's all set in this absurd setting. The main character is amazing. I think she's wonderful. I love reading from her perspective, and just the whole storyline was so good, so intense. Oh, this was just a fantastic book. I'd highly recommend it, especially if you are like a little bit hesitant to pick up science fiction. It is intense in a lot of parts. It is definitely a science fiction thriller, but it's not so intense on the actual science fiction things. So I feel like if you are like kind of slowly want to make your way into the genre, this is a good point to start at. And yeah, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Dear Rachel Maddow by Adrian Kistner. This was also wonderful. It's one of my most anticipated releases. It is a YA contemporary about a girl who had this school assignment of writing a letter to a famous person, something, I don't remember the exact thing, but she wrote a letter to Rachel Maddow, and Rachel Maddow actually replied, and then she kind of started using this as a diary. She kind of wrote emails addressed to Rachel Maddow, but then, you know, only saved them in her drafts, and so we kind of read her diary basically, but all in a letter format. And I actually, going into this, didn't know that it would all be in these letters. I thought it would be occasional letters, but then also, you know, just story. But it's all letters, and I thought it worked incredibly well. This is one of those stories that has very dark themes and very intense topics in it, but at the same time, it has some really great, cute and funny and fluffy moments. It's not a fluffy book by any means, but it packs these dark themes into a story that still makes you feel good. In my personal opinion, it probably depends a little bit on your personal experiences as well. This has trigger warnings for step-parental abuse, even physical abuse, so be very aware going into that. And then also suicide. There is a character who has committed suicide, so like suicide of a loved one, but then also there's some suicidal ideations, some suicidal thoughts going on in the main character's head, and also some alcohol abuse. So yeah, you can tell it has a lot of dark themes, but as I said, I think it was just written in a way where you were not feeling down the whole time, but there were always some really cute and funny and fluffy moments. Did I mention this was queer? I don't think I did. But yeah, the main character is a lesbian. I'm pretty sure, I don't have the physical copy obviously, so I can't look it up, but I'm pretty sure lesbian is actually used on page, which is wonderful. It does not happen often enough. So there's also a female-female romance in here, and I also really enjoyed that one. I thought that was one of the best parts that would always kind of get you out of the like dark and really emotional topics. Thought the romance was written in a way that was incredibly happy and fluffy and just cute. And yeah, overall I thought it was just a great mix of all of these things. I'd highly recommend it. Audiobook as well, and I gave Dear Rachel Maddow 4 out of 5 stars as well. Then I listened to the audiobook of How I Resist. This is a non-fiction anthology edited by Maureen Johnson, and this has all kinds of diverse authors in it, kind of giving tips to teens and everybody basically on activism. And I thought this was wonderful. I ended up not giving it a rating because, you know, sometimes I'm having a hard time rating these kinds of non-fiction books, but I think it was really well done. There were, as I said, some like very straightforward tips on like how to be an activist, like call your reps, all that kinds of stuff. But then also it had some personal stories in there. It had some fictional stories in there. It had some more like essay kind of things. So there was just a big variety of things. There were also different kind of diversities, queer people, people of color, disabled characters. So I thought that was great as well. Obviously, there can always be more. There can always be different, you know, marginalizations portrayed in it. But overall, I think this was a great experience. Definitely very much US centric. But, you know, just having the opportunity to listen to this like 3.5 something audiobook, I thought was very wonderful, and I definitely recommend it whether you're a teen or not. Then I read Heart of Thorns by Brie Barton. This is an arc that comes out at the end of July, and there will be a full review of it. This is a YA fantasy that was described as Graceling meets Pride and Prejudice. Please forget that. I think it really, like, the book was really not bad at all, but this gives you wrong expectations, okay? Don't expect Pride and Prejudice, and certainly don't expect Graceling. Overall, I had a good time reading this. I just think this was incredibly slow. Especially the first half was so slow, and I really had to drag myself through it. I really enjoyed the world building and the setting. I think it was described in a really wonderful way. I really enjoyed the whole cast of characters. There's some diverse characters in there as well, which you will find in my Goodreads review and also then in my video review. But yeah, it was just so slow, and me going into it with, you know, the thing Pride and Prejudice, I expected much more from the romance. I liked it, but if you give me Pride and Prejudice, I want much more than what I got out of it. I want much more angst. I almost think like the romance was too small. Like, don't give me Pride and Prejudice and then don't make the romance intense. It was like hate to friendship to love, which I know some people love, but if I know Pride and Prejudice, I want hate to love. I want hating each other, and then all of a sudden I want you standing in the meadow holding hands. You know what I mean? I wanted more of that development. I just went into it with these wrong expectations. And I'm kind of mad because I think the romantic storyline is really not a huge part of this, and the fact that some people might be put off by it because it's kind of described as Pride and Prejudice makes me a little mad. But yeah, overall, definitely had an enjoyable experience. This is kind of the fantasy that I just really like, and I'm like super pumped to read the sequel, which hasn't really happened a lot. A lot of the time at the moment when I'm reading new releases especially that will have sequels, I'm like, by the time that sequel comes out, I will not care. With this one, I am pumped, and I think I will still be pumped by the time that sequel actually comes around. So I think that's a good sign. I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I don't know, like I look back at some of the similar YA fantasy I've read and I'm not sure if 3.5 is actually accurate, but I think that's also because I like the second half so much more, whereas some of the other YA books that I rated a little bit higher, it was less but more consistent, you know what I mean? So, you know, 3.5, something between 3.25 and 3.75, okay? That's what I'm going with. And finally, this month, I finished Sea Witch by Sarah Henning. This book broke my heart, and I'm also gonna have a full video review up for that in July, because this also comes out July 31st, but it's not gonna be a real video review because I don't have a lot of opinions and thoughts on it. I just have emotions. A lot of them. A lot. It was just one of those books that crept up on me. I was excited to go into it. You know, Ursula origin story. I was like, yes, I love The Little Mermaid. I love Ursula. I love villain origin stories. And I had huge hopes that this would be different, because I feel like for a long time, villain origin stories would always follow the same kind of themes and it would all be the same reasoning. But I think we're kind of over that. So I was like, I trust Sarah Henning. I don't know her, but I trust her. And then I was like, this is gonna be good, hopefully. And it was very original, it was very different, it was written in a way that even though you know the ending, it had twists and turns, it had some surprises in there, it just had certain things where you were like, how is that gonna end, even though you know the actual end. That is an amazing skill, so I applaud Sarah Henning. But yeah, most of all, I just could feel myself falling in love with this. I could also feel my heart breaking with every page. You know how sometimes a book doesn't necessarily have like sad things in there throughout it, but you can see the dark horizon, you can see the thunderstorm coming, and you can feel your heart shattering into pieces, like slowly. That was this book. I finished it and it was one of those books where I finished it and I just couldn't stop crying. And it was like 1:30 a.m. at that point. I should have slept, but this book, I'm just very emotional about it. I'm very, very emotional about it. Yeah, I don't know, something about it just really, really got me. Something about it just clicked with me. I just fell in love. I just had an emotional connection to it. Can't really explain it. This is just one of those books that will have a place in my heart for a long time. I obviously gave Sea Witch a 5 out of 5 stars. So yeah, this was my amazing month of June. As I said, it's just... wow, this month was amazing. You know, I have 2 books that not only were 5-star reads, but that also made it onto my top books of the year list. I hope you all had a great reading month. If you read any amazing queer books that you think I have not yet read, please, you know, recommend them to me, or in general, you know, your favorite read of June. And thank you so much for watching. I guess I'll see you soon. Bye!